I think when we approach emotional validation as a method to get them to do something, be something, change something, think something, it becomes less about understanding, connection, helping someone better understand themselves, like really being present with someone, and it becomes much more about control. Welcome back to the Parenting Pair podcast. I'm Dr. Suzanne Allen.
And I'm Dr. Annalise Karen.
And something that I have noticed recently in the world of parenting online is a lot of discussion about validation. You know, with phrases like connection before correction or lead with empathy or curiosity, right? Encouraging parents to be validating, emotionally validating to their children and teens. Mm-hmm. And I am not questioning that whatsoever, because we know from the research that there is a tremendous amount of benefit to the relationship and to the mental health and functioning of young people when they receive emotional validation.
Really, to all of us, right?
Oh, yeah.
When I come to work and I don't know, I've done something and you really, are curious about it or interested in it or ask more about it or, bring awareness to it, I feel better and I feel more connected to you, right? Yeah. And that's so the fact that this sort of advice is going out there is, very positive, right?
Absolutely. Not questioning the benefits of it whatsoever. I wanted, though, today to dig a little bit more into this because the feeling I get sometimes from hearing this or looking at this is that emotional validation is being sold as this tool or strategy to help our teens calm down or cool off, or to get them to then be able to problem solve or do the thing. And I think when we approach emotional validation as a method to get them to do something, be something, change something, think something, it becomes less about what I believe, and I think what the research tells us emotional validation is, which is about understanding, connection, helping someone better understand themselves, like really being present with someone. It becomes less about that, and it becomes much more about control. And
yes.
Strategy and approach. And if anybody is going to call your bluff in life or read between the lines, it is your tween or teen who will feel it, sense it,
smell it, feel it, fight back, argue. Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, they will experience that as sort of a manipulation or just me having to do what mom's validating me without real, genuine care just to get me to do Y, to do X or Y, right?
Yeah. She's being nice because she wants something, or she's only sitting here and listening.
Horrible feeling. Right.
Totally.
And I don't think that that's how all parents, validate their kids by any means. But, I can admit that there are times maybe when I've been, either pressured with time or, and I've maybe been a little dysregulated myself internally.
Yeah.
That and my now two teenagers, but at whatever point in their development, I might have sort of not really felt it and said something that was more like, okay, I got it, or maybe even attempting to be even more connected, but really kind of wanting that urge that sometimes you can feel of like wanting to get to the, but we just have to do this.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, especially when there's a time pressure, right? Like not wanting to go to something, right? The school or the practice or whatever, or the SAT or whatever the thing is, of course it makes sense you're nervous. Lots of people feel this way, right?
Now you got to go.
But the clock is ticking and maybe you have to pick up someone for the carpool, or maybe you're going to be late to work now, right? So these are real, genuine reasons for us to feel pressured and kind of want to move things along sometimes. We've all been guilty of it, right?
Sure.
But unfortunately, that type of control tends to backfire. So I think I keep throwing out the word validation. Let's talk a little bit more about that and what actually emotional validation is. Let's set the stage for that, and then we'll kind of dive into more of this.
I think validation, practicing validation or what validation is really about a genuine interest in truly understanding, genuine interest in being curious and being present with another person and their emotional experience, right? And allowing for that, right? Not trying to change it, being present with it, validating maybe whatever they're going through is hard, is often what you're validating, but trying to understand the other person as opposed to what Suzanne was just describing, trying to control the outcome. Like, yeah, that's really hard, but we've got to go do this other thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it requires, a certain amount of kind of willingness to allow the person. And I think often we can have more willingness with people our own age, like with other adults,
Right.
For them to feel sad or upset, right? Because when you tell me things you're frustrated or worried about, I'm not afraid then of what you're going to do. I kind of have this faith and trust of like, okay, we're both grown-ups. We'll both show up to work, even though we're having a rough morning.
Right.
Like, that's going to work out. I think it's hard sometimes to have a little bit more willingness for our teens because it feels really painful when they're struggling, or we might really worry about the outcome.
Might worry about the outcome. And I think another layer on top of that sometimes for parents is worrying that, if I validate what they're going through, or if I acknowledge and am really curious about this difficulty or this thing that maybe they're concerned about that I'm not, or that upsets me, that maybe I'm somehow approving of that behavior or approving of something, by really being curious and open and listening to something. I think parents sometimes worry, well, will this mean I think it's okay that they were doing drugs, at the party and that was stressful to you, you know?
That they're going to hook up with that random guy.
Right.
Their friends think they should. Yeah.
Right.
And so let's be clear about that. Emotional validation is really saying to the other person, like, it's about feeling, not doing. It's I'm trying to understand, or I understand how you're feeling. It makes sense for you that you feel this way. I'm accepting that this is your emotional experience. It is different from I'm accepting, encouraging, or thinking that you're going to do the right thing, or this behavior is okay. Like, yes, you feel this way, so you can not go to school or hook up with that person, right? It's the feelings make sense for you in this moment.
And I don't know about you, but when I feel as though someone, and you've done this for me many a times, but, when family members do this for me or other friends, when I feel like someone is really being present and being curious and being supportive of me, genuinely, that when I feel that, I feel so much closer to the person. And I think, that we know this about validation, it builds trust in relationships. And that's really what we want as parents, to have our children feel that they can trust us.
And it's a unique thing, this trust, because it's kind of two variations of it. One, I think it's trust between the person who is validating or trying to validate and understand and be present with you. But it also, and this is huge for child and adolescent development, builds trust of self, right? Because if, I'm really nervous about a presentation and I say that to you and you say, well, it makes sense. You haven't gotten up in front of people in a while, or you always worry about what people think of you, right? That tells me, yeah, I make sense. What I'm thinking makes sense. What I'm feeling makes sense. It's important. I can trust myself.
So I can trust my own judgment, because my mom acknowledged that's okay that I feel that way, that I feel nervous before the presentation, and she sees it and she's allowing for it and she's not trying to change it. I think oftentimes we, and any of us, but parents in general, can come in with that situation and just say, but you always do great in presentations, so don't even worry about it. And as much as that is very well-intentioned, and maybe at some point in the conversation you can say that. Yeah, certainly. Yeah. If you lead with that, it kind of minimizes the fear, discomfort, distress that child or teen might want validated or understood.
And how disjointed that feeling is of like, I feel this way. This person's telling me that I shouldn't, or I don't need to, or I don't have to feel that way, but I still feel that way. So what's wrong with me? Why can't I get that under control, or what?
And now I'm even more anxious and I'm more mad because this person doesn't understand me, or there's something wrong with me. And it's kind of circles in this other thing. So, that is that idea of connect and then correct, right? Like maybe you do, to your tween or teen, correct may or may not be the right word, but offer the suggestion or reminder that there has been a past time where they did great in a presentation, or you even can, that's a whole nother podcast, how we can frame, anxiety before events and whatnot. But just that space of being heard, understood, felt by another person is incredibly relieving.
And that's exactly it. We know from the research, right? emotional validation helps to reduce distress.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Invalidation tends to increase distress, and they've measured that kind of prolonged physiological signs of stress and distress in the body, right? So it does, quote unquote, work, right, to help alleviate distress. And in the long term, there are links between, so it's not causal, but there are
Sure.
connections between kind of invalidation and chronic invalidation and later mental health concerns like anxiety and depression, and issues with emotion regulation.
Yeah.
So it is good, like you said, for all of us. It's positive and healthy for all of us to feel understood
Mm-hmm.
or to feel like someone is trying to understand us.
And I think that's the thing, just to highlight here, the validation, that feels so good to have the experience of someone trying to understand you and connecting with you and honoring what you're saying, and not trying to change it, right? So that feels good in the moment. But I think it's important to highlight that doesn't solve the problem,
Mhm.
right? So the validation is actually really helpful to a teen's developing emotion regulation skills, trust in relationships, understanding of themselves. There's so many benefits to this, but it won't solve the problem. The presentation may still be very anxiety provoking, right? Or this terrible thing happened among a peer group, or there's pressure to hook up, right?
Yeah.
And I can imagine the parent with the pressure to hook up story could be like, don't hook up, this isn't the guy, or whatever
Yeah.
the story is. But if you can just be present with just the possibility, it's like an honor to have the moment to be present with your teen sharing this information or expressing this, that's the job. Not
That's such an interesting way of thinking about it, almost like, because it feels so awful, like the hookup that Ray is like, but it's like, this is a gift I've been given, this piece of information, this experience, this how my child or teen is seeing the world. I've been given this gift. Let me handle this with some care.
honor them and what they're experiencing, regardless of what it may set out in us, emotionally, to hear this information.
And that's the hard part, I think, right? Because I have yet to meet a parent who comes into my office and says, I'd like help invalidating my teen's emotional experience or my child. I have not gotten that phone call yet. There are a lot of things that get in the way, right, of this, fear, right? When we're talking about, drugs or sex or risk-taking, I don't know, the multitude of things.
Mhm.
It's scary.
Yep.
We're hearing scary things sometimes, and we are human beings. And it is a very natural urge that when we hear something scary or alarming, we may want to shut that down.
Yes.
Very quickly.
And I can tell you that I had a moment recently with one of my teenagers where I suddenly found myself saying, instead of doing everything Suzanne's describing at the doorway, and I yelled, absolutely not. That was not validation, right? But so it's hard. We don't hit it, out of the park every time, right? Like sometimes we totally strike out, and that may even be more often than not. But the more that we can edge toward, right, trying to be present. And, what was really amazing about that moment, because I was off the rails, really.
Can we get a video clip of that?
My son looked at me, and I was really elevated and frustrated. But he actually just started laughing at me. And we both started laughing.
They laugh at us, yeah.
Because
it does.
I was off the rails. Now, that was a good moment. He was in the right space to laugh at me. I really was off the rails. It probably would have been better if I hadn't screamed absolutely not, and I just had been present with where he was. Because the reality was I was in his door jamb of his bedroom, and I was not. There was no real immediate danger.
Imminent danger, you can scream absolutely.
Yeah, and
not.
So that was a faux.
Yeah.
That was a mistake.
Yeah, but you know what? It's a good point because it often feels like imminent danger, right?
Right. And so that I was like, why are we talking about this? If we're talking about this,
Who are we?
yeah, we're talking.
Why are we here?
To say that our own emotions can get in the way. Our beliefs that whatever's going on is unjustified or shouldn't happen or they're too young for it. Those beliefs relates to that emotional response, and that can make validation hard.
Yeah. What also can make it really hard is sometimes when we don't fully grasp or kind of understand, like maybe the extent of
A situation.
or our teen or tweens, right? They're different than us. We're different people. what makes me really nervous or worried or upset is, we share some commonalities, but it's going to be different in our kids. And,
Right.
they have heightened kind of stuff going on socially, like there's different pressures, right, in their lives. So I think sometimes for parents, it can be really difficult when something seems like relatively benign, or we kind of know maybe in the long term, this isn't going to be a huge deal. You'll have
Right.
plenty of boyfriends in life or girlfriends or whatever it might be. Or sometimes their emotion is confusing. Like, I think I told the story, it's a silly one, but, about how my teens wouldn't go to this place in town to get smoothies because it would ruin their aura. And that shows
And
how
you're-
dated, because that's probably a very outdated word now. But
But you were sitting there, just go in and get it. And then almost, I imagine that behavior looked, when they wouldn't go in and get it, looked like they were being disrespectful to you or just unwilling. And it's like, come on, guys, just go in and get it. But once you sort of were able to slow down and learned that if you stepped into that store, you got bad aura, that you were hurting their social capital.
yes.
You were hurting, like they wouldn't want to be seen in there.
Yeah. And while sometimes
wouldn't have
they
guessed
still
that.
might have to do that, right? Like, because sometimes, we all have to eat humble pie and go into the place or say the thing that
Right.
makes us look inappropriate or whatever, or lose our social capital. And sometimes we don't, right? But I think my point is, like, I know that's a silly example in the grand scheme of all the things we're dealing with, is that sometimes we're not going to totally understand.
Yep.
And sometimes I think respecting that other people's emotional experiences might be different than our own, and it can be hard to relate, but we can try to hold space for that and be validating that given their time of life, their school, their
Yep.
peers, whatever it is going on, that makes sense for them, even when we can't make sense of it,
Right.
helps that relationship and helps them, be more thoughtful about their own emotions and be able to
Right.
observe those and discuss them and
But also-
navigate them.
And brings you closer in that relationship.
Yeah.
But I think what you highlighted there is important. Just because you validate what your child is saying or experiencing doesn't necessarily mean you agree with it, right? So
Yeah,
at the end of the
or
day,
get it.
they might still have to go into the store, but if you can really be present and understand, that's going to go a lot further than minimizing that feeling, because that'll probably escalate things.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I think, I feel like I've been a little all over the place today in this,
No.
but I think why I really wanted to bring this up and talk about it with you is, for me, kind of what I'm holding closest and I really want to be thoughtful about is to not rush through the validation part. Because I think when we see it as a skill, it's often like, okay, step number 1, validate the emotion. Step number 2, ask if they're
Right.
willing to jump to problem solving. Step number 3, right? And that becomes a formula. It feels like control. And we're also outcome focused on, I'm validating because it's going to help them change their behavior. It's going to help them calm down. And I think when we see validation less as kind of a strategy or skill and more as like a wish,
A way of being.
a way of being, a hope for a relationship with our child or teen, then it becomes less about the 4-step process.
Yep.
And becomes much more about, who is my kid?
Right.
Who are they? Like, how do they think? How do they feel? What do they experience in this world? What is their life like? And I just think that makes such a radical difference in how you feel, but also how you communicate and how it makes your teen feel,
Hugely different.
than seeing it as part of a 4-step plan. So I just want to really encourage everyone, and I'm saying this in part because I'm really working on this too. So this is a little bit of a personal, goal of that's not step 1. Like
That's just how,
that's
if we could
it.
exist in the world that way.
Yeah. Because I want to be around people who want to know me and understand me and
care and
And
deeply
care.
connect, and not just be feeling as though those relationships where you feel as though someone's just trying to get you to do something
Yeah.
or get something out of you. Those relationships feel a lot more empty as adults, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want, our kids to have relationships just be transactional like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I think, you were beautifully stating it, Suzanne, but it improves your relationship, but it also improves with your teen and your teens with you, but it improves your teen's understanding of relationships. Because I really think we need to remind ourselves and keep in mind that how we behave with them is how they come to understand how they should relate in the world and they should be related to. And so if we're building relationships where a parent, not every time, you're going to have the absolutely not times like I did, but where you make attempts more often than not to try to be present with, understand, care what your teen is saying, within reason, that will benefit them long term in terms of what they expect in relationships and how they're treated. So it's really powerful.
And I would almost throw a what now out if you're listening to this and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I've done the doorway thing like Annalise has.
Well, yeah, we've already highlighted. I've done the doorway thing a number of times.
Yeah. That's going to happen because we're human beings, and you can always go back and validate post situation or check in and I was so stressed about getting you to school or about being late to work or about grandma's birthday party that I, thought you were going to ruin, whatever it was, that I totally missed out on really just trying to understand what's going on here or how you felt. And that's just as powerful as in the moment validation.
And that can be, and those were sort of examples that can be incredibly stressful, but might not sound it. It could be I was so scared and overwhelmed when I heard that you were at a party where there was that much illicit drugs and the police came, or that, we got the call from the police station, whatever it is, that I acted that way and I'm sorry. Right?
I responded out of my safety brain or fear.
And I didn't mean to do that. And, I think that in and of itself, an apology is a validation of another person, because it means that you're honoring that maybe you messed up and you respect them enough to acknowledge that wasn't right. And that's also important for our teens as they grow.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you for bringing this topic to our attention, Suzanne. It's good to slow down and reflect.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for listening to me on that.
Absolutely.
I hope that everyone enjoyed this. We really appreciate and value the questions that you send in or stories that you share with us, and ratings and reviews. And so if you have a moment and wouldn't mind going and clicking the review button, or if you listen to this and think, oh my gosh, I want to work on this too, or my sister would, or I have a friend who would appreciate this, please share this episode with them or any of our other episodes. We would appreciate it.
Yeah. And with that, validate away and have a great week.